Welcome. Thank you so much, Kenny Cole and Anna Dibble, for having this chat with me. All right, so let's jump right in. So let's start with you, Anna. Big question, just a broad overview question. You've been making art for a long time now. I mean, since you were a kid. With your under your dad's tutelage, starting from a very young age. What drives you to make art in general, and what's inspiring you right now?
It's that subject's so interesting. What drives anybody to make art? I think that I think of that as being kind of what just as mysterious as what drives the process of whatever ends up on the surface when you're working. It's completely mysterious. I have no idea. It's something though that I think I've noticed that there are a lot of very talented people who are very good at artwork, but a lot of them don't have a drive. And I think it's 75% of what we do. I think you really need that more than you need talent. Because it just keeps you going. You don't stop. It just is something that's part of your life, like brushing your teeth. Um, right now, what's driving me is that weird thing. But it always changes depending on what's going on in the outside world. We're now in a situation where we've never been in before in this country, in this world. And I am affected by that. I think most of thinking people are. And so I am assuming that maybe that's going to come out in what I'm painting. I don't know. I mean, I look at it afterwards and think, okay, maybe this is where this is coming from. But again, so many things like this are so mysterious.
Yeah, I certainly feel that in your art. I feel like it does come through. I mean, I always think of you as an activist artist, especially related to environment and the decline of the planet. What I also love is that, we're hearing a lot of political people right now calling on us to be both activists and really excellent at self-care, and still accessing our joy. And I see that in your work a lot, Anna. I see these joyful characters and these colors. So you seem, well, in person and on the page, to me, to be somebody who's got that balance figured out.
It's not an intellectual thing at all. I kind of wish that I sort of admire art that's dealing with the dark side, and I'm always thinking, why isn't that coming out? And then it's like, and I guess it's just the way I am. That somehow I actually look at things in a fairly dark way. I think I have a lot of, I have hope, but I don't have a lot of optimism. And so I would think that would come out too. And in a way, I sort of hope it does, that there's a balance there with some dark and light, because I don't think it's all one or the other.
Right. You know, I alluded to this in my other conversation that I've had so far with two other artists in the show, but you two may not know that the idea for the show kind of came out of this idea of a circle. I used to facilitate women's circles, and I did that over several decades. And as I was doing that, I began to learn that every perspective was really valid and really useful and really helpful. So that's sort of, in the circle of this show, I feel like we have different ways of dealing with what our political climate is, and it's all extremely valid and useful and can be reflective of us as the audience. Um, so thank you for sharing that. And Kenny, jumping over to you, same question. What drives you to make art? Big, huge question. And what's inspiring you currently?
I think the outside world, I really try to connect with it and think about it. But I really like hearing Anna talk about her playfulness, because I think that's also a huge key, is to just to have that kind of playfulness. I think you have to have it, and it also goes back to what you're saying about you know, trying to save the world, but also not burning out yourself. And like, it sounds like Anna just has a regular rhythm where she allows things to come in. She's not sure if they're coming in and going out onto a paper or canvas, but she has a feeling that they might be. But she's taking them in, so she's got kind of a built-in process. I think I'm a little more conscious of really reaching out into the world and consciously grabbing onto things, stuff that happens in the world. I mean, I've been around for a while, so I look back, you know, at my work from the 90s, and whatever was happening in the news back then, I was putting it into my artwork too. But also all along the way, I mean, I like to think that there's a playfulness in my work too. And I just think a lot of times I just think everything is absurd. So absurdity and playfulness are big elements that I really enjoy. And so what am I into right now? Probably 5 or 6 things, and it's very frustrating that I'm only one human being. And I'd like to do everything. I think I'm very easily distracted. But I do try to latch onto something and follow it through. So I think with this show, I started something new, and it was these collages using vintage newspaper. And I'm still doing a little bit of that, but I put a little bit of pause on it. But I really, you know, I was excited to try something new for the show.
You know, it's funny that you're working in this because when you were talking about, you know, Anna being playful and you hope that you have that as well. I think you do. It has to my perspective is that it has a sharper edge. I know that you're very intentionally a political artist and have been for a long time. So I think of you as satirical. And, you know, maybe there's a little more dark comedy present. I mean, I saw that in your small piece that you had in the Small Works show this winter as well. But, you know, I think of you as almost like a political cartoonist, but in different media.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have like a punchline, like a political cartoonist might have. And I like Anna, I wanna make art. So I wanted to sort of process through my instincts, and I think that's interesting and more important. And I think almost every artist, I really do. I really think almost every artist is political. I think just by being an artist, you are stepping outside of the world. The world has laws and rules, and everyone goes through their jobs and they get on their, you know, get in their cars and they drive around. Artists step outside of that, and we create something from a completely different perspective that doesn't necessarily agree with all the chatter that's going on out there. And so we give people an opportunity to sort of think about existence from a very unique personal perspective. So
Yeah,
I think we're all political.
I'd underline that word personal. I mean, I think that's that connection between the personal and the political, you know, that the courage that it takes to take something so deeply personal as like translating your thoughts and feelings and intuition into whatever media you're working with, and then having the guts to share it is an activist expression.
And I think people really appreciate it, because it's not necessarily a political slogan, but it's engaging. So,
there's no attempt to manipulate necessarily, or or bring people over to your way of thinking.
It's open, and you can make it whatever you want.
People are welcome to take it in to the extent that they want to. Yeah, that's the great invitation. I love that. And that's what this show is all about as well. There's this invitation to come in and see these unique perspectives put forth by 8 artists and see what may resonate and what may not. I mean, I know for me personally, I didn't expect to, but I got a lot of messages in the show about really attending to myself, making sure that I'm feeding my care, my rest, my joy, all the things that I need to be fully human in order to exist in this time. I just wanted to cue up a couple quotes from what you wrote and just see if you wanted to say anything more about that. So Anna, you're very forthright. There's no there's no dancing around your feelings right now, which I appreciate so much. I'm feeling very similarly. You said this new Republican Party's extraordinary ability to create an alternative reality for over half of the American public. I see that in the mitten imagery in your piece. You talked about pulling the wool over the eyes of the American public. I see some other things with currency potentially, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about your piece in the context of that quote.
Well, the main thing was that the man of the year is the Kool-Aid man. And because it's that, and Jim Jones is at the top of the table there, because that's become just part of our language now, where we say they drink the Kool-Aid, because of course he had all these people drink the Kool-Aid and they all died. And that was sort of the sort of general idea I started with, and then I just had fun with kind of going crazy with people. There's one guy who's shooting up Kool-Aid and everybody's drinking it or throwing it up or just going crazy with it, because I actually think this is one of the main reasons we have the current administration is that somehow they were able after 2020 to really inject this lie about that election and all the other. They have a story of a new world, of an alternative reality that they have been able to feed to a lot of the population, because so many people are addicted to social media on their phones, and they figured that out. They figured out which people in the population to target, and then digitally they could do that. And I think it's really one of the main reasons we have this situation here. It's continuing to go on in a big way. And our side, the Democrats, are going to have to figure out how to get back and tell the real story. I just think it's not being told.
Kenny, Kenny, I have a lot of fun saying your title. Kenny's piece is GAG and MAGAAAAAAGA Hit and Run Charlottesville. It's a mouthful, and the piece is an eyeful. One of the quotes that I pulled from what you wrote is that you have an impulse to create work that takes into consideration longer stretches of time, greater histories of conflict, and ultimately the rise and fall of power structures.
I remember when just before January 6th and Trump was saying it just seemed like he wasn't going to leave. And I remember just saying to myself, I just want him to leave. I just want the process. Democracy is not perfect, but okay, your time is over. I wanted him to leave. And I just remember thinking, whatever happens, if he leaves, I'll just accept whatever happens. I didn't think he'd get reelected, but anyway, I have to stick to that. So I kind of now I think what's helping me the most is like reading history and just going back. I actually just happened to be reading a book about like the revolution in America, 1700s. But the piece that I made, I have these old vintage newspapers from the 1800s, and just reading them and reading like what was going on back then, and sort of the chaos and the mayhem of America just throughout history, somehow that's been kind of cathartic. It's like, okay, this is not the first time that things have been just turned upside down and inside out. So that's been helpful. And so I'm also kind of like, okay, he's there, this is what our country wanted. This is, a majority of the people in our country want this. And so I'm like, what do they want? And that's sort of where the title of the piece is, which is, it's essentially their slogan is "Make America Great Again." And I'm thinking, I'm thinking when was that time? When was the great time? And I think you can look at it as great or awful. You can look at it both ways. And so it's kind of an interesting, open-ended perspective. And I think, like Anna was saying, the technological world that we live in today, you can just sign on to whatever group you want and whatever belief you want, and you can, start influencing people with whatever garbled ideas you have. And it's like, it's where we are, and it's going to play itself out. And I think on election night, I was looking at the election results, and it didn't look good early on. And I immediately just did a search for AOC in what is it, 2028 now? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Just to see, like, I'm just like gonna skip through the next 4 years and sort of keep my fingers crossed with democracy. It's that ultimately, like Leonard Cohen says, democracy is coming to the USA. I'm not sure if it's quite here yet.
When you're talking about social media too, I'm thinking about propaganda, and there's so many ways that we're being, like, I look through my feed now that a lot of the guardrails are off, and there's so many more obvious ways to try to distract me and get me to kind of put my head in the sand and just, sort of be attracted to the shiny things so I don't notice what's happening. I'm really noticing that. And I'm thinking about your piece, your piece is full of so many figures, and a lot of those figures, I mean, some may come from cartoons, but a lot of them come from marketing images as well. And like, that's how we were, back then. That's how the system.
That's what I was struck by. I was like looking through these newspapers from the 1890s, and it's like the same as today.
Yeah.
It's these products that we don't use anymore, and technology has moved along. A lot of these, some of the newspapers are like, they were like farm journals. So there's a lot of farm equipment, and just a lot of these incredible machines that are just cast iron machines, big clunky machines.
Yeah.
And as soon as like gasoline came along, they just disappeared. And but at the time it was just like, you got to have this,
You'll be happy if you have it. The world will be better if you have it. Drink this Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's just like, that's why I feel that art, we're not trying to force anything down your throat. You can approach it if you want. You don't have to. But it's how we feel. It's how we feel inside, and it's what we think. We may not have perfect thoughts. We may have flaws, but we're human, and art is a very interesting human engagement, where you're in the studio and you're thinking about the world, and you create a form, and then it goes outside and someone has no idea who you are, they react to it. And it's so open-ended that it's just to me it's a very important like human endeavor, and it I know I get feedback that I think people, it transcends, even no matter how political you are, I think it still transcends politics.
Agreed. And you just preemptively answered my final question. So I'll just pose the question. And if you have anything more to say about it, then chime in, and then we'll go to Anna. But the simple question, why is art important right now? Anything, where you summed it up pretty well. Anything more you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like our only hope, because it does live sort of outside of these boxes that we voluntarily put ourselves in.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it could be activism as well. I don't know. I mean, we're recording this the day after the Super Bowl. I don't know if you watched the halftime show with Ken Lar.
I used to play sports, but I never watched them.
I'm so not a sports person. I watch for the art. I watch for the commercials, which is marketing, but also there are artists making those things. And I watched the halftime show, and it was quite a political statement. So I strongly encourage you to take it in and like read up about it as well, because it was I was really moved by it. And I'll toss to you, Anna. Why is art so important right now?
Fascist regimes have always suppressed art and the artists. And I think that that's the time we're in now in this country, and it seems to be spreading all over the world, this kind of government that we define as fascist dictatorship, kings, queens. And so, I mean, to me, art is the most important part of element of society or culture anyway, or it is culture, I guess. But now it's especially important that we go on really working hard and not letting these people push us down, and then keep putting our work out there, and just that's it. There's nothing else. I mean, at least for me.
Yeah, it's freedom to create, and freedom to share, freedom to view,
and be critical too, and sort of
Can you say that again, Kenny?
to be critical, and not to be afraid to express yourself, no matter what your thoughts are, and like Anna says, I mean, right now the party that's running the country is basically answerable to one person. I mean, that's the way that's what everyone's voted for. That's what they set themselves up for. And that's kind of a scary situation. It basically, it's, so I think, having alternate voices and artists sort of, being more political and putting the work out there.
And I would say remind us, and remind us that we do have power, right? That is what they're trying to set up. But we do have power when we act in masses, which, have you counted how many figures are on your piece, Kenny?
No, no.
Probably a couple hundred.
Yeah, I don't know if the figures are sort of victims, or if they're coming together and moving forward, but probably a little bit of everything is happening. And I think, viewing it, you can view it however you want, see it however you want.
Yep.
I mean, even as an artist that's created work, when I look at it, I see different things in it myself. Even, aside from maybe some intentions I had, usually the intentions are not so specific. And as you're building the piece, you sort of let things happen.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about art, is that it transcends even the artist's intention.
Yeah.
You know, it can be so much to so many people. I'm so grateful that both of you said yes to the invitation to be in this show. I hope to see you soon. Just in case this part is still in the recording, the show closes on February 28th. I hope folks get in and, you know, are courageous enough to venture out in the snow and the cold to find a little salve that is much needed in these times.